Hey VC, what's up? It's me, yours truly. I'm back to post a quick video here. This is going to be a response to Farley, his 500 subscribers contest. Farley's Retro Fan Cave is his username. For those of you that know him, really cool guy, of course. You know, he's been in the VC here for a while now. Fun guy to watch, funny guy to watch. Good personality, the whole nine. One of those kind of guys that you're walking down a dark alley and some you might freak out as you approach them at the beginning of the alley. And by the time you got to the end of the alley, you have your arm around his neck and you're laughing and joking about everything, and he's your new best friend for the rest of your life. Which is one of those kind of guys, which are the kind of guys I love. So yeah, this is going to be a response to his 500 subscribers contest. For those of you that are not familiar with him, you know, just the fact that he has 500 subs and should have a ton more, make sure as you're watching this video, go over to his channel, subscribe. You'll definitely love what he does, his taste in music, the whole nine. Just very cool guy. So yeah, man, I definitely had to come in and kind of, pay my respects for your 500 subs. You put this question up a few days ago, and I've spent the last couple of days pulling stuff off the shelves and just been kind of sprawled out over my kitchen table trying to come up with the answers that I wanted to give, and I finally got everything narrowed down to the numbers that you had. And thank God it was your 500 subscribers contest and not like your 1,000 or 2,000, because coming up with 5 answers for each one was a little bit tough. But again, very good questions. You know, kind of made the wheels turn and really made me work to narrow it down on a couple of things. And as always, a good chunk of these are what I'm feeling really over the last few days of what my answers would be. On some, you ask me a couple weeks from now, it'll be totally different answers. But let's kind of jump right into it. This is his Rule of Five contest. So it's, five this, five that. And the first one is your five favorite vocalists. No particular order, but I will say the first three that I'm going to show are my top three favorite vocalists of all time. This was actually probably the easiest question to answer because I already knew these three right off the bat. I've been answering this question this way for I don't know how many years now. So in no particular order, three of my top five, the ultimate three, starts with Sam Cooke. My boy right there. Just no way to get around that. You know, Sam Cooke, of course, originally started out in the church. He actually kind of snuck away to do secular music because it wasn't really condoned by the church at that time. And the way he brought that gospel element into the soul and R&B side, I mean, Sam is just a bad boy. So definitely one of the greatest vocalists of all time. And I've always said on this particular album, you can see that, which is live at the Harlem Square Club. On side two, he does the song "Somebody Have Mercy," and then the next song is "Bring It On Home to Me." Well, the last 2 minutes or so of "Somebody Have Mercy" is actually the intro into "Bring It On Home to Me," and that 2 minute intro or so that he does right there, to me, tells you everything that you need to know about why Sam Cooke is a bad man. I mean, and it's a live recording too, which really just kind of shows when he was on stage and letting it loose. I mean, he was taking people to church in the club. So just an amazing vocalist. The next one, going with Steve Perry. Of course, everyone knows him from Journey, but Steve Perry is a bad man, and it's really not much of a surprise that I like Steve Perry and have him as one of my top vocalists of all time. Because when you really get down to it, those inflections that he has in his voice and the way that he changes his tone when he's holding certain notes or certain words and things like that, it is basically the rock and roll version of Sam Cooke. And Sam Cooke is really the R&B version of Steve Perry. And you could easily have taken these two guys, changed positions, and they could have easily covered each other's songs with great accuracy and just been right on point, just like they were doing their own stuff. So have to have Steve Perry in that as well. And I've always considered those two, and those are two brothers from another mother right there, because they were one and the same. And then my third, the one and only Wilson Pickett. It's a bad man right there too, boy. The power in this dude's voice, the power in the soul in his voice, never be another like it. And, you know, there's all kind of great stuff like In the Midnight Hour and 634, 5789, you know, all these different kind of big hits and everything. But I've always said if you want to really truly feel what he can do vocally, you have to go to his cover of the Beatles' Hey Jude, listen to it from front to back, especially the end, and he just again shows you what he can do with his voice. So definitely one of the greatest vocalists of all time. All right, and those three are always right there on the pick. I can't even say one is better than the other, but those are the three greatest vocalists of all time in my opinion. Now the last two that I picked, I tried to make a rule for myself where I could only have two R&B vocalists. Otherwise, I would have went into Motown and with, you know, David Ruffin and Smokey, or going in the Stax records and all of that. You know, it would have just been all R&B. So I picked no Whitney Houston, no Aretha Franklin, no Roberta Flack. All this, so lot left out there. So the other two that I picked here, which were not R&B, I went with one rock, if you will, and I decided to go with Chris. Of course, you guys know Chris. And I really want to pull out something from his Audio Slave time frame here, just because, you know, obviously with Soundgarden and, you know, incredible, amazing stuff, but I really feel with Soundgarden, even with, you know, some of the slower stuff like Black Hole Sun and things like that, I've always liked the power of Soundgarden. Stuff like Outshine and things like that. That was the Soundgarden I really loved. And I felt like his voice in there was really more about power with Soundgarden. But when he went to Audio Slave, it was a little more, still power, but there was a little more of an eloquence or beauty to the power. And so I kind of like, I can't say I like Audio Slave's music better than Soundgarden. I can't say that. About the same, but you have to ask, depends on what day you ask me. But again, vocally, what he was doing, there was a little more beauty in Audio Slave than Soundgarden. So definitely pick Chris for that. And last but not least, I decided to go with one country. And you know, great vocalist here, probably one of my favorite country voices. Not to slight Cash, because I mean Cash is just his own unique thing. Luke Bryan. You know, and I'm definitely a huge fan of Luke, and, you know, this is definitely my favorite album by him. But I've always think when you go to that song, This Is How We Roll, with, you know, Florida Georgia Line. Is it Georgia, Florida Georgia Line? You know, he makes a cameo in that song, and that one piece that he sings at the end where he does that little solo piece, I just always thought that the amber in his voice and everything during that piece, it was just like, that's perfect country. The inflections and where they were, it just always sounded perfect to me every time I hear that song. So I decided to choose him as one there as well. So those are 5 favorite vocalists. And let me move along. I won't talk as much because I want this video to be like 40 minutes long. 5 favorite guitarists. Let's see here. First of all, we're going to go with Mick Mars from Motley Crue. Now, the reason I'm picking Mick, not because he's like the greatest technical guitar player and blah, 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 but his guitar tone, number one, the tone that he had throughout his years with Motley Crue, I thought was fascinating, and great riffs, of course. I mean, you think about all the great Motley Crue songs and the riffs that go along with them, but it's that way that he played that fine line between having these metal type of tone and somewhat metal riffs, but at the same time playing very well into the hair metal side of things. I just always felt like he did a perfect job of walking that fine line, where he was, you know, as slick and in some cases as heavy, and riffs were as ruthless as a lot of metal stuff, but then, you know, totally playing on the hair metal thing. So I've always admired him for that, and I think he is a fantastic guitarist for really being able to do that, because there's a lot of bands that just could not manage that. You were either totally metal, totally glam, even though Motley Crue is considered glam, I don't think all of his riffs are by any means. So have him on the list. Jimmy, I really need to say anything about that. It's Jimmy. Second verse or second guitar solo in Voodoo Child after the first verse, I think is one of the greatest guitar solos ever. Here's a guy who probably didn't get thought about as much as being a great guitarist, as typically I think about him more as a fantastic songwriter, but he is a great guitarist, and it's of course Neil Young. And when you look at how diverse Neil is in his guitar playing, I mean, if you listen to songs like, you know, Walk With Me off of Lanois, just the whole Lanois album, the heaviness of that, and then you go to a song like Ramada Inn off of Psychedelic Pill, that's just really kind of, well, psychedelic-like, but then you have to go to There Comes a Time, and he's going totally country on that, and it's fabulous stuff. But then you have to go to Keep On Rockin' in the Free World, which is as much classic rock in your face as you can get. Okay, but then you have to go to Sample and Hold off of Trans, and now you're getting in all that futuristic voice box stuff, and it's all like great. I mean, the guy is just a musical genius, and his guitar playing is really shown through, or how great a guitar player he is really shows through his diversity of all the great guitar work that he's done. I mean, I have to say anything about that is Chuck, one of the godfathers of rock and roll. Of course, he's one of my favorite guitarists of all times. And last but not least, going with my boy Dimebag. Unforgettable. I mean, you hear a Dimebag riff, you know it's a Dimebag riff. So not only was he a great guitar player and, you know, the whole Heavy Pantera thing, but also to make himself so unique in what he did, Dime has to be on that list. So now moving along to 5 favorite bass players. Larry Graham. This is Graham Central Station, but I'm referring probably more so to his days with Sly and the Family Stone. I mean, again, when you know Sly and the Family Stone and Graham Central Station, you know the funk that came out between those two bands, and Graham was the one on the bass just doing it. So he's definitely on my list. Another one of my favorite bass players, Rob T from Metallica. I mean, truly do love him. Not only is he skilled, just his personality and just everything about him as an individual. Talk about a freaking tremendous addition to Metallica. Almost to the point where Metallica was a great addition to him, because he was just fantastic. So he's without question one of my favorite bass players. Then we're going to Cameo. I'm not actually going to pick out one specific name, because there was kind of a couple here and there throughout the course of their career. But yeah, but Cameo, again, there's a couple different names that people that actually played bass on their different albums. And that's one I definitely have to select. You know, a lot of their stuff, especially their late 70s and early 80s stuff, a lot of it was built around the bass, whether it's stuff like She's Strange, Attack Me With Your Love, Candy going into the 90s, Keep It Hot going back into, like I said, late 70s, early 80s, all that funky stuff. The bass carried those songs. And again, if you're really curious about the different players, you can kind of go back and look that up. No surprise here. I mean, I picked out this album too because one of my favorite bass lines throughout Rush's catalog is the song "Roll the Bones." I love the bass line in that song. So, you know, you gotta put Lee in there. And then of course my boy Neal. I mean, just a musical genius, period. So you can have your lot of picking all the different incredible things he's worked on, but of course he was one of the founders of Chic here, and you know, just one of the best bass players out there. He's done work on so many people's stuff, it's not even funny. So that's what we're going to use as far as bass players, and we're at the 14-minute mark, so we're doing pretty good. 5 favorite deceased. Now the way I thought about that is the 5 deceased that I would, you know, if I could actually have an opportunity to have them come back for a day or two, where I could kind of hang out with them and just pick their mind and ask them questions, and you know, just have those conversations. You know, what was it like, and tell me more about you and all of that. So that's how I picked my five people I like to do that with. So first one here is probably no surprise, Mr. Bowie. You know, could you imagine sitting down a couple of days just hanging out and talking with him about life from start to finish, his career from start to finish? That would be totally amazing. Same thing here. Howlin Wolf. Sit down and talk to that brother, man. Be able to pick his brain and just hear stories about life before and during being Mr. Howlin Wolf. I mean, that would just be fascinating. I can't even imagine the stories he could share. And no surprise here again, Jimmy. Just sit back. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't do anything. Those 2 days I would hang out with Jimmy would probably be the first time I'd ever smoke, just to hang out with him and to be on that level with him. So if Jimmy ever comes back and wants to sit down and talk for a couple of days and hang out, that'll be the first time I'll ever touch marijuana or anything like that. And the last two here, Prince, kind of a little freak that he is, but you know, musically he's a genius. And if I had the opportunity to, you know, sit down with him for a couple of days and be able to talk about his career and especially his creativity, I would love to kind of know where he got inspiration specifically for a lot of the things that he wrote and put together. That would just be fascinating to me to get an understanding of where that came from. And last but not least, Wendy Williams. She'd be another one that just to sit down and pick her brain for a couple of days and then be able to sit there for the next couple of weeks and wonder, like, what the hell is wrong with that chick? I think would be pretty darn fascinating. So Wendy would be the other one that I would, you know, love to hang out with for a couple of days and just kind of get a better idea of what she was all about from herself. So that's 5 favorite deceased. 5 albums that define you as a fan. That was a hard one. And I put a lot of thought process into this one. And again, the approach I'm taking here is an alien that comes down. Here's a, you know, humans deal with the stuff called music and blah, blah, blah. What's the music that, you know, Brandon, you like so much? So, well, I'll kind of explain why I picked the albums I picked as I go through here. Because it was really hard, because I mean, as most of you guys know, I mean, my musical taste is all over the place. So it's like to limit that to 5. It's like, oh, I'm leaving out this, I'm leaving out that, I'm leaving out this genre, and blah blah blah. So this was the way that I thought if an alien listened to every single song and really internalized every song off of each album, they would get a good idea of who I was musically. This was really tough. I went back and forth with so many different albums. So first we're going to start off here with Africa Bambaataa. Alright, so on here, you know, you're going to get stuff like Planet Rock, Looking for the Perfect Beat, all that good stuff. This is going to be a good combination between some electronica type of stuff, because, you know, even stuff like Planet Rock was sampled from Kraftwerk. You know, so you're going to get some of that element in here. Not to mention you're going to get early hip-hop, breakdancing type music and so forth, and then also elements of rap. So this is going to be kind of a good summary that's going to pull in those elements just off of an alien truly understanding this one album from front to back. So that's one. The next one I went to here, The Cure. Of course, Disintegration here. And again, what I'm wanting to pull off of this is all those elements of new wave. You know, so of course with The Cure, you're going to get the more upbeat type stuff, some of the darker stuff that may feel a little darker, like Love Song, the new age love, like Pictures of You, and just all those different type of things. So this will be a good pull from all that stuff I really love from the 80s to help the aliens understand that about me. Next, I'm going with Led Zeppelin. And this by far is not my favorite Led Zeppelin album. This is probably the one I listened to the least, matter of fact. It's their first album. But the reason I would give this one to the aliens is because this is going to really pull in and help them understand my classic rock side. You know, it's stuff like Communication Breakdown and things like that. But then this is also going to bring in my strong love for blues music as well. They'll be able to get that off of this album too. So now I'm kind of covering that classic rock and blues side. Mainly a little more blues on this, but still. Now after that, I'm going to give them Garage Inc. by Metallica. Now why am I choosing this one? Well, because again, now you're getting into pulling some of the more classic rock, but on the different side, like their cover of Stone Cold Crazy by Queen. So now you have that type of rock in their Alien Minds. But then you're also pulling in something like Tuesday's Gone with the Wind from Skynyrd. So now you're making sure that some of that southern rock element is also pulled in there. Whiskey in a Jar, again, just kind of some of that more straight in your face type hard rock. But then you also have songs like Am I Evil and Small Hours, which is going to bring some of the element of metal into that hard rock metal element into the picture as well. So now again, they're absorbing all those different styles, and there's a bunch of different songs from different places you can pull out on this, Merciful Fate and a lot of different things. So that's going to start to help them understand a bit of at least my metal love down on some lines. And then the last album, we're going with Stevie Wonder, this classic piece of his, which is of course Songs in the Key of Life. A lot of different things off of here, but of course you're going to start bringing in the R&B element. But the one thing that Stevie did so great on this album is he really kind of just let things flow. So, songs like Have a Talk with God, that definitely brings in the gospel element on that song and a couple others actually on this album. And then when you have songs like Contusion, which is more or less kind of a jazz type of jam, a little bit of a funky jazz type of jam. So now the jazz element is brought in. And again, we're not even going to go into the R&B element and everything that brings to the table. So between those 5 albums right there, kind of show them all at once here again, just to, between these 5 albums, I think the Aliens, again, if they internalize and really took in the elements of each individual song off each album, they would get a pretty good and full idea of, kind of who I am as a music lover. I should mention that Stevie Wonder album too. There's a couple of songs on there that definitely have a bit of a kind of a world influence, a little bit of an Africana type of influence in them as well, which is why I also picked that album, because I'm a huge world music fan too. So that one was tough. It took me a long time to put those records together. That's the one that held up the video. Okay, so those are the 5 albums that define you. And the last one was 5 movies or books that really kind of have an impact on you. There's a couple that come right off the bat. Passion of the Christ. I remember the first time I saw that movie in the theater, and every time I've seen it since. I mean, it's one of those ones that you don't just get up and walk away from that without having just, overwhelming thoughts and feelings and everything else that come about from that. So that's one. Rocky 2, as cheesy as that sounds, because Rocky is so big and got so cliche, but going back to the way that I functioned throughout my college career and my basketball career, even kind of competitive bodybuilding I did in the past, there's so many elements of the push and the desire to take yourself to levels that you've never been to where nothing or no one could stop you, and you could go through any amount of pain and suffering to get to where you wanted to get to, just surely based off of will, just pure physical will to take your body to that level. All those elements, of course, are so present in Rocky that every time I watch that, it's just it brings all that stuff back up for me. Especially at the end when he says, yo, Adrian, I did it, and he lifts the belt above his head. It's just that thought and being in that place of giving every single thing you have to the point where you're experiencing pain and discomfort and things at a level you never even imagined could take place, just for that one moment to be able to raise your hands and say, you know, look what I did, look what I was able to do. And like, it literally brings me to tears almost every single time I see that. So as cheesy as it sounds, that's a very, very impactful movie, which I think for a lot of people, that's why it became so big. Let's see, the other two, Schindler's List and The Pianist, are two that I would put on there. I'm a World War II junkie. I'm fascinated by everything that happened in that conflict, understanding it, really internalizing the scale of it, the things that led up to it, and really understanding the history of it, which is really freaky that we're so stupid to repeat so much of that stuff. But yeah, so those two movies, Schindler's List and The Pianist, very moving every single time I watch those. And the last one I'll put on the list, since there's not a lot of movies just totally take me to these, you know, crazy places, there's a movie called Swept Away. Kind of a, I guess like a mid-budget, I don't think, it wasn't a big budget type of film, but this rich lady is on a boat with her husband and her friends, and they have, you know, these servants, and she's always talking down to them and blah, blah, blah. Well, of course, they get lost in this little dinghy. Now they're on the island. It's just her and the servant that she put down so much. And, you know, they're at each other's throat. He's on her case, making her, you know, bow down to him because now he's the only one with survival skills. She's totally dependent on him. But they ended up really kind of, you know, falling for each other and having this connection. And there's a scene in there where they're really kind of connecting. And the song Fade Into You by, what's her name? Mazzy Star, I think it is. That song is playing, and at the end of the scene, they're sitting side by side on the beach. She has an old raggedy sweater on. He has no shirt on. She has this pair of funny glasses, like that are shaped in stars, you know, like silly glasses. One of the lenses is missing, and she's sitting there with those on. And as the song is playing, they make them both just kind of rise up and above the beach. You know, clearly it's like a green screen. It's the background that's actually moving. But it's just the imagery that they created with that scene of them going to this magical place emotionally with each other. Every time I see that, I'm just like, wow. It's like if I ever thought about being that close with someone or ever getting to that place with someone, like that's what it would look like, you know? And so every time I see that, it's just a really, really moving thing, especially with that song playing with it as well. So that's more of a scene, I guess. It's moving. I mean, the entire movie as a whole is nothing spectacular, but that was the fifth one I came up with. All right, so that's 25 minutes of me going blah, 28 minutes of me going blah, 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 blah. I don't have an imitation of anyone to do, so I guess I'm going to have to skip on that last part. It'll keep the video shorter anyway. So, Farley, man, congratulations on the 500 subs. Thank you for totally making me go crazy over the last few days trying to come up with these answers. But hope you enjoy it, man. Again, we'll look forward to your 1,000 subscribers contest. Take care, brother. We'll talk to you later.